Hello, and congratulations on surviving a week and a half in lockdown so far. We deserve medals already. And the good news is it's only one more week until Lent is over, which means if you've given up caffeine or sugar or alcohol, you can have a glass of wine, coffee, and a chocolate bar next week. So good. So this week I wanted to look at a passage in Ezekiel. I've been reading a lot of the books of the prophets recently in the Bible and finding them particularly interesting at this time during coronavirus and what the prophets have to say about Jesus coming and the shift that that's going to make in the world. And so the verse that I wanted to speak from tonight is in Ezekiel 36, verse 26. And it says, "I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh." And in the book of Ezekiel, we see that despite Israel being God's chosen people, they've departed from his covenant and have rebelled against him, turning to idolatry, displaying selfishness, and generally just hardening their hearts towards God. But he says through the prophet Ezekiel, this is what I'm going to do for my people of Israel. I am going to give them new hearts. And I think I was reflecting on this and how we see a lot of the same context in today's society. We promote a kind of look out for number one, you do you, it doesn't matter as long as you're happy type mantra. And I even went into Typo the other day to get a new notebook. And one of the notebooks had the tagline on the front, "Me first." And I was like, oh, this is literally like everything that's wrong with our culture. And in the same way that the Israelites turned and went away from God to pursue their own things, we've done exactly the same. And it's left us as a culture quite disconnected and isolated and independent and often just really unhappy. And during this time of lockdown, I feel like God is really starting to wake us up to this way of living that we've been living and calling us into something different. And one thing I found really interesting with the government and how they're describing how we should be over the next few weeks is this term bubble. And it's a really good concept that we stay in our bubbles and we don't kind of socialise with other people in order to practice social distancing and stop the virus spreading. That's a really great thing. But I think also the idea of this bubble is given to us by the world. And the world kind of tells us to stay in our bubble, stay in our comfortable lives, surround ourselves with people who look like us and think like us and act like us. And it ends up separating us from each other. It causes division and polarization and a lack of empathy when we section ourselves off from other people. But what's interesting is this pandemic is showing us that whilst we're in a physical bubble, we're actually not able to exist in isolation apart from each other. And it's shown us how interconnected we all really are. And it's caused us to look outside of our individual bubbles and notice what's going on with people around us, not just on the other side of the world, but our neighbours next door as well, in a way that perhaps we never have before. It's showing us that no one is exempt, that we're all in this together, and that the only way of eradicating COVID-19 is actually to work together. And so in that sense, we're probably more connected than ever, even though we're physically isolated. So what has all of this got to do with this Ezekiel passage that we've read about today? Well, in Isaiah, God says, "See, I am doing a new thing. Do you not perceive it?" And I think God is doing a new thing in our nation and our world. And it's starting with this transformation of our hearts. And I spoke a bit about this last week in the lyrics to that song, Coming Back to the Heart of Worship. So when I was 19, I was in Africa on my gap year, as people call it, and I had to have an appendicitis, and I got my appendix removed. And when I woke up from the operation, the surgeon told me that it had gone well, and that actually my appendix had a number of like stony hard bits like lodged into it. Sorry, it's a bit graphic. Hope you're not eating your dinner. And it was good that they removed this, because actually it would have caused me real difficulty and would have ended up having my appendix explode, and might have died of it as a result, which is no light thing. And I think the same is true of our hearts, that actually over time we have little stones that almost lodge their way into our hearts. And those stones can be caused by things like loss or disappointment or hurt or resentment. Each one of those things lodges like a little stone, that actually, if we don't deal with it, ends up hardening our hearts. And I think some of the signs of when our hearts are getting harder are things like being more selfish as opposed to generous, and experiencing compassion fatigue when we look at things that are happening in other countries or things on the news, as opposed to feeling empathy for people, and protecting ourselves and being defensive rather than being open and vulnerable. Maybe you notice some of those things in yourself. I know I can definitely relate to all three of those examples. But in Ezekiel 36, this is the New Living Translation, God says, I will give you a new heart, and I will put a new spirit in you. I will take out your stony, stubborn heart and give you a tender, responsive heart. And I really believe that God is wanting to reset the way that we do things. He is restoring the kind of natural order of things in the world. And He's really wanting to reset and renew our own hearts. And as Christians, I think we're going to be instrumental in the plans that God has got for the world. And He knows we can't operate with hearts that are hardened. We've got to be people that reflect Him, people of love and compassion. And we're already starting to see a movement of this, like not just in New Zealand, but across the world. And people are connecting in new ways and looking out for each other and being generous and breaking out of their own way of doing things in order to recognise the need around them. So the question this evening that I want to bring to us is, what do we need to let go of in order to have our hearts transformed? And we know that thanks to Jesus, we are a new creation, and we can give all of our stuff to Him and He'll take it. And He tells us that He wants to make us new, to give us that spirit that lives in us, so that actually we can have those hearts of flesh. So I'm just going to pray for us as we close. Feel free to close your eyes if you want to. So Lord, I just thank you that you care about the state of our hearts. Thank you that you aren't satisfied with leaving us as we are. That you sent your Son so that your Spirit would always be able to live in us. And Lord, we're sorry for where we've shut ourselves off to you and to others around us, where we've shut our hearts off through fear of being hurt, and where we've been living in our own bubbles of self-preservation. Lord, as we spend time in our physical isolation bubbles over the coming weeks, would you enable our hearts, minds and spirits to break out of isolation? Would you give us new hearts, hearts of flesh, that are open to you, open to each other? And would we never be the same again? Amen. Hello, me again. Why sit in an armchair when you can sit on the floor next to it? Anyway, just giving you this week's notices. The first one is that our 1830 collab, which was meant to happen a few weeks ago, is going online. So we've created a survey with the same questions we were going to ask on that evening, and we're going to post a link in your email and also on our 20s and 30s Facebook page. So take some time over the next week, just reflect on those questions, share your thoughts and your ideas for the evening service with us. And secondly, we do evening prayer every day from Monday to Friday at 9 o'clock on the website, on the St. Paul's website. And it's a chance to just open the Bible together and pray at the end of each day. So I'd encourage you to join us for that if you haven't checked it out already. And finally, all of our small groups are still happening online via Zoom mainly. And so a few of our young adult small group leaders are just going to join us now through the form of video to share some of their top tips for lockdown.
Hey guys, my name is Johan and I am a small group leader with the 20s and 30s of St. Paul's. While in this lockdown, I am locked away all by myself in my home. But something I've been really loving is the fact that I've got all this time now to discover all the recipes that I want to do. And something I've decided is to live stream all of it to my friends so they can also join along with me in this cooking process. Yesterday I made a whole bunch of wontons and I live streamed it to all my friends. They got the recipe as well. Now, this has become my dinner for this evening, and I've just added a bit of instant ramen to it, so it's now a wonton ramen mixture. I'm a little afraid of it right at this very moment because I probably added too much chili oil, but I think this is gonna be a really good time.
I'm in lockdown with my parents and one of my sisters. We all get along pretty well, so there hasn't been any drama yet. I'm someone who has about 1,000 hobbies, so I haven't found myself getting bored yet. But as a bubble, we've been taking walks in the neighbourhood, walking our dog. It's been really cool to see parts of the neighbourhood that we haven't really seen before. We've also been taking part in the St. Paul's Taskmaster challenges, which has been a lot of fun and definitely keeps us entertained. We've been talking with friends and family overseas on video chat, playing board games, cooking new meals, taking up new hobbies, and of course watching a lot of Netflix and Disney+.
Hello St. Paul's, my name is Miria, and one strategy I have been using for surviving the lockdown has been to just do exercise. I have scheduled a time in my day around lunchtime for me to do a short routine, exercise routine, and to go for a run or for a walk. And I think what has been great is that we as a flat are doing that together so we can keep each other accountable. But that has been a great way to make sure that my mental health is doing good.
Hey guys, Alex here, and with all the disruptions that have been happening around us, the thing that's been most helpful for me is actually finding new rhythms of little ways that give life in my day. So for me, that's simply as like having a good slow morning of reading and going for a run midday, but our flat also goes for a walk at 5 o'clock every day together. And these simple things just help me center down and just breathe the life into me. So if there's any tip that I can give you guys, it's actually finding new rhythms to maximize this time that we have together. I think now more than ever, these rhythms can actually help us build our relationship with God, help us center down with ourselves, but also build a sense of family in our homes. So find what works for you and what works for your house.